So let's start with the journey, because the journey of this process and the point of this is what explains all the reels. So all the videos people see on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I wouldn't call it viral in the fullest extent, but it's caught a lot of traction. How about that? Brendan, by the way, for those listening, is my high school point guard. Played college basketball, has a basketball background. He knows me. And so he's going to help facilitate some of this conversation, because I'll just start from the very beginning. About 18 months ago, I think it was 18, maybe it's more than that. First off, maybe I should go way back. Everyone wants to play basketball. Who's a basketball player doesn't want to stop playing basketball? Pretty straightforward, right? You're like, look, I want to be good at basketball. And it becomes a point in time where you're not good enough at basketball, so your career ends. It's like a very clear path.
Pretty standard for every basketball player. For
some
most
people
basketball
in
players.
middle school, some people in high school. But very rarely does it end and then have an opportunity to reboot because you've gotten better at something that limited you before. And so when I played, I was very unathletic. Very. I could shoot the basketball very well. Brendan can attest to this.
Could always shoot the rock, always.
And I shot well in college, and I did not start in college or any of that. And then, I had the burden of like not being successful in my life in basketball drive me to schooling endeavors, scholastic endeavors. So long story short, strength conditioning degrees, sports, exercise science degree, worked as a sports scientist, director of a facility, worked more in consulting and sports science. Then went to kind of player development and training, worked with guys like AJ Green through his senior year in college, through his draft combine process, guys like Reed Travis, who played at Stanford, Kentucky, now overseas in Japan, Ethan Happ, playing right now in Spain, the Canary Islands. I think it's that Spain. I don't know. Canary Islands, maybe it's a separate country. Apologize, people of Canary Islands. The point is, I worked in player development and like sports science and all this stuff. And I always told my athletes, if I could do it, screw you guys. I'm not training you anymore. I'm going to do it. And I got into player development, and naturally I thought what I did was right. I thought it was more right than wrong. And I thought my training methods are really good. I got more athletic. I went from like my senior year in college was the first time I hung on the rim with two hands. I remember it. I remember first time doing it at Pally High School. I ran baseline left side. I remember it vividly. Is it Kevin, the guy who's the point guard 4 or 5 years below us, had the curly hair, was there on the side. I jumped up and hung on the rim with two hands. I was wearing white tights. This is how clear the memory is. And I hung on the rim with
every
two
detail.
hands, and like it was fingertips hanging on the rim. And I thought like, I'm gonna tip slam today. Like it's just irrational belief that was gonna happen. I remember like running and jumping and hanging on the rim and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. Now, I don't even know if I could dunk a basketball based on that jump height there, just to give you a taste of my athleticism. Now, I train people and I train them to become more explosive and more athletic and better at basketball. And I myself became all of a sudden more explosive and athletic. And the first bout of that like athleticism really coming to fruition was when I was like 26, I think. I really tried to dunk basketballs and jump high, hit my head on the backboard. That was really fun. My knees were kind of beat up, and it wasn't basketball related. It was just like jumping. So like in my head, I was never like, oh, no, I'm going to be good at basketball. Like it was just like, oh, I can jump high, which is fun. But as a former basketball player, that's not enough to be actually like good at basketball, nor is it like transferable. But then, like I said, I got the last 2 years into player development kind of stuff, working with athletes in a hybrid model, and they've started to make a lot of progress. And I was doing a lot of the drills with them. And then I thought to myself, well, if this works for them, and I'm much more athletic now than I used to be, athletic enough to play like a sheer athletic output at some professional level, let's see if I'm as smart as I think I am. Like, let's actually do this. And I can push myself to the level that isn't safe for other athletes to push themselves. Like I would never push a professional athlete like this because they're already a professional athlete. I can like throw all caution to the wind, borderline negligent in some of my endeavors for myself, in an attempt to see what I can really do. And so that was kind of the initial like thought process behind this. Now I wanted to I promised some of my guys I played with that I would try out for a G League team. But I don't want to just try out and get my ass kicked. I could try out right now, I suppose, or 2 years ago. Anyone can try out. You pay $200, you try out. So I was like, let me actually see if I can make a professional roster. Now, the G League is like a huge stretch, but that at least puts a date and a time. There's an open tryout. Europe is very different. There's lots of connections involved, and you have to have certain tryouts, certain showcases. Certain coaches have to be there. You need agents. The G League tryout was way more straightforward, and you can go and play and know whether or not you belong. Like, and if I go there and I belong, but I'm not going to make it because I'm old or I'm not whatever, I can, hold my head up high. I'm a basketball player. You know when you're good enough and not good enough, especially if you're not irrational in your beliefs. So that's like the entire global view of this process of like where it stems from. But the actual process I took very seriously in terms of like phases, timing of things, how we progress things. Because like I said, I really wanted to try and do this at the best way possible. And with that in mind, I wanted to basically have the highest probability of success. And in doing that, I treat it the same way I train my athletes, my players. So that's kind of where that's the background, right? Division III hooper, sports science strength coach, gets more athletic because he learned sports science and strength training, then gets people better at basketball, then has thoughts of grandeur that he himself might be able to make a professional roster. And why not try and do it? Like, that's the very short synopsis of a professional roster, not the NBA. Professional.
Yeah, I think that's a key distinction too for you. Professional roster. See a lot of people on your social media trying to clown you on
But
making an
anyone
NBA
who
team.
plays basketball knows that if you play if you play basketball and you hear professional, you don't really think NBA. You hear
Exactly.
NBA because the
You're
G
talking about
League
the NBA, you would say NBA.
Yeah, like everyone knows like the NBA is a very special, like there's a sports car, or is it a sports car? Sport car? And then there's a Lamborghini.
Right.
Like, you wouldn't say I drive a sports car. I drive a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Right. But a sports car could mean many different things. A Camaro, it could be older, it could be newer. It's all encompassing, but no one would think you drive a Lamborghini if you're driving a sports car. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah, that is funny. You do have to acknowledge that. But I think, Max, one question I have before you dive into this is you've been training your athletes and working out with them. What's been kind of their feedback in your process and kind of their take?
Played with the guys, who I train with in the summer normally. So they haven't come back. So they haven't been able to evaluate if I'm any good or not. I played with a couple of guys who are pros now, which is great, but they don't have a previous standpoint. So like they don't know like, oh, you are better, you are worse, or whatever.
Right. They're coming into knowing your game right now at age 31, as opposed to seeing your development from growing up.
And a lot of the guys I train are interested in it. Like I've gotten more support from every athlete actually I've trained has supported this goal. I've gotten texts from players who I work with, super excited about it. Because I think they know me and they know the commitment level. But they also are like, I don't know, this is kind of interesting. Let's see if we can pull it off. Because I am, like, in reality, I am better than like 99% of people who play basketball.
I think that's the key for people to know that it's your
like,
ability is very, very good. Like you're not just doing this as a bench warmer. Like you're a very good basketball player.
Or you put me like in a 24-hour fitness, like I played in an adult league, like a very kind of generic adult league. Like, I don't know, I scored 38 points 1/2. Like, it's not like, and that's anybody who played college basketball who's continued to play, probably, and they've maintained some shape, probably is better at basketball. I'm not saying like they would have been better in college, but at basketball as a whole, because they've matured around their game and they can like, if you're playing against people who are way less athletic than what you're used to playing, your athleticism doesn't matter that much. So you can just like play with your skill. And so what's funny is I went and played, I don't want to skip too far ahead because we'll go over this later, but I played pickup and like a very competitive pickup. Like this is a school open gym, I should call it, and pickup. Like they're running actions and offenses. And my passing was like really good. Like I have never like passed well my whole life. And it's funny because when I played like in these adult league games, I would just mess around passing at times. And so that skill got developed. And then I went and played. We're doing like a DHO, so dribble handoff action, or like certain pick and rolls. And like I'm throwing passes like they're just pockets and left and right. So I understand lead passes better because my maturity is better. And this is what I wanted to talk about in this process for like this whole phase one. And that's the mindset, because I'm approaching this with the mindset. So today's topic is phase one, like the whole introductory phase of this. How could this even become possible? So I had the athleticism. I don't even count that as phase one. That's like phase zero. I was banged up and I was beat up. And I was playing with Will Curious right now, who plays in Austria. He played in Australia the year before. And so I just kind of find similar sounding countries, I guess. Austria, Australia. I wonder what's next for him. Maybe
Very
America.
different, but yeah, similar sounding.
Yeah. My ADD kicks in. But I was really beat up. And my thought process was, well, I want to do something called an athletic bulk. And I wanted to get as heavy as I possibly could and still dunk a basketball. I thought it'd be funny, but the point of it was actually a kind of a scientific endeavor to retrain my body to move. Like I was training the athletes at the time. I was working with Will, but making sure I'm eating a surplus of calories. So I'm like, in the way you would bulk to build muscle, I'm bulking to like rebuild my tissues, because I was dealing with a lot of different aches and pains that would constantly set me back for months at a time. So like the idea of even playing a season just seemed so ridiculous to me. So I got intentionally heavy and I played lots of basketball and did like plyometric stuff during this. And then I got to about 235, 232. I obliterated my shoulder, got nerve damage in it. And then I was like, screw it. I'm going to lose weight. We're going to start the cut right now. Because if I can't lift upper body or do anything with my arm, I'm just going to actually get really fat. And then I'll be really, in a pickle. And so the first phase was cutting down. And this actually took about a year. Retrospective, like now I thought like it took, looking back on, I thought it was like 4 to 6 months. And someone's like, no, dude, that was a year I've been following you. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It was. And in that year time, I had a kid. I started new training stuff. A lot happened. But I'm going to walk through the weight loss process of that, because a lot of people get this totally wrong. A lot of people think shape and condition is a weight, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I want to get to a certain weight to play. Yeah. Right? There might be a weight associated with a condition and a shape, but the weight doesn't dictate the shape and condition. So I was like, I'm going to lose this weight, but I'm going to lose it as slow as I possibly can while maintaining my entire workout regimen, no reduction in it. And I'm going to do it as much time as I need to do. So over 13 months, I basically weighed myself every single day. I focused on not overreacting to any single day. I focused on not trying to be excessive and like lose my weight fast. And then I went from kind of, fluffy and heavy to pretty shredded in like 13 months. But that set the base and foundation during that time for me to be physically active to the point where I could start to really train. During that period is when I start to ramp up stuff. And the reason why I really want to point this out in phase one and why this initial period is so important, because it was just like to see if I could even get down to that condition, then I'd really go for it. Like I hadn't really gone for it. It's kind of like in the back of my mind, like, oh, this is a fun idea. This is a cool concept. I kind of got down in weight in about, let's say if it was December 2023, it was my end point, and my start point was October 31st, 2022. And like October and September, I lost enough weight that I was like, I'm gonna start really jumping again. Like, let's see if I can like hit my head on the backboard and stuff. And then I start jumping high again. And then I'm like, okay, like maybe we got something here. Like maybe there's something I can do with this, because I got down in weight. I'm preserved, if not better, athleticism than I was previously. And at that point in time, I think I had the motivation because all my athletes had left. And I really wanted to try full-heartedly to see what I could do. So that phase one, like I said, there's some key takeaways. When I lost that weight, it was like, I took some notes for you guys, by the way. Eat for fuel. not for shape. The shape is going to be dictated by your conditioning. Control your appetite. This is like a big one for me because I think when people lose weight, they just want to cut out all the weight, all the food, and then they just like can't stop eating because they get so hungry. You want to like maintain a control of your appetite. And don't sacrifice for performance. Like don't eat less and have that get in the way of your training. Weigh yourself daily. Don't overreact to any weight. Don't make it, a burden on yourself. Something like, oh, I need to be at this weight at this certain time. You'll get there when you get there. There's a calorie to tastiness ratio. If something has a lot of calories, but it tastes so good to me, I'll eat it. But if it doesn't taste that good and has lots of calories, I'll avoid it. And then basically I supplemented collagen as needed. And then focused on my, weight as a symptom of my body composition versus weight itself. So that's kind of phase one. That's really phase one. That was pseudo documented because I was like saying like, oh, I'm trying to train to be the most athletic dad and stuff. You could look at some of my old reels. I didn't say professional basketball. But then when I got to the point where I really wanted to commit to it, I was like, look, I'm going to try and see if I can get a professional contract. Can this happen? I don't know. Probably not. The odds are wildly against it, but I'm going to try. You know what I mean? Like I'm really going to put forth the effort so I can learn from it. But also, I might actually try and get one. I do want to get one. Of course, I want to get one. Like, don't be silly. I'm also well aware of my limitations of trying to achieve one. So that's kind of like the entire phase one chunk.
Yeah. Well, so Max, that lays out a lot of, lays out your whole kind of process to this point that we're at now. And I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about this process, why you're doing it. And I think you've answered a lot of those questions, but some of the other questions that we're seeing, more general, not so much completely tied to phase one, but how many times a day are you training? It seems to be a common question that you get on all your platforms. And how are you optimizing your training for what you're trying to accomplish here?
So this philosophy all started with AJ during his pre-senior year training for you and I. And basically we're like, if time is unlimited, should you actually ever stop training in a day, or should you merely train enough that you need a little bit of rest and restart? And that was like a very interesting philosophical question because people are like, look, you should train 90 minutes. Well, like, why do you train 90 minutes in college? Because that's the only window you're allowed to train in. Like, is that really best? Versus I'm going to train to achieve something. Like, I'm going to train to get something done. When that thing is done, I'll take a break and rest so I can try and achieve something else. If you're just trying to achieve a bunch of stuff over 90 minutes, well, the last 45 minutes are going to suffer relative to the first 45 minutes. It's like if you had a bunch of math problems to do and you got tired mentally after the first 45 minutes, why would you just sit there and chug away the next? Just take a break and go back and do them. I assume writers are the same way. When they get in a groove, they go, but then they take a break and then they would groove again and go and take a break. And then you listen to your body and you do what's relative to that. Obviously, there's a structure, so it's not I'm going to try to achieve the same thing multiple times in a day. It's a great way to get overuse injuries. It's not like lift heavy, I feel good, lift heavy, I feel good, lift heavy. Like, okay, well, you're gonna burn out during that. Instead, you want to think about, are certain things complementary if I do one and the next? Are certain things not complementary? Like I can shoot my spot shooting and then I can do a light workout and then I can go intense later in the day. But if I go intense really early, then like, does that ruin the rest of my workouts later in the day? So my spot shooting's worse because now I'm just crap tired and my lifting's worse. So then there's like, you need some continuity in it. But it's all about understanding your needs. And this is really important. I didn't touch on this. So in my attempt to be better, and we'll talk about this in phase two, it's you have to have a hypothesis. Like, I think I will be this role if I were to play in a professional team. What are the qualifications for that role? And what things do I need to work on to achieve those qualifications? So I want to be a movement shooter. I want to play good defense. I want to be able to shoot with range. And I want to be a contested shooter. So I mean, I can spot shoot, shooting basically, and some movement and defense. There's nothing with ball handling. Like, I'm not going to spend hours ball handling. I'm not going to be in a pick and roll. Watch the NBA, watch professional teams. You don't have guys who aren't pick and roll players. You don't see Doug McDermott getting a pick and roll. No one's gonna be like, yeah, let's get Doug McDermott in a pick and roll. But Doug McDermott makes a lot of money. No one's like, hey, Joe Harris, we're gonna do an ISO PNR for you. You're like, or top of the key, I should say, or even ISO elbow. You're like, that's not his game. The same way you don't have like Hashim Thabit shoot spot up threes. Like it's not his game. So the question is like, what is your game? And then develop that game the same way Brooke Lopez developed his game to fit a specific role that fits modern day NBA. The same concept can be applied to you. And then you look at that and say, what do you need? And you spend your time allocated to those things. So that's how the entire programming is structured. It's based on some guesswork, some hypotheses, and you kind of work from there. I'll just outline some of the stuff for listeners who might hear it in the future. I talk about like, oh, I went from like one intense day to like a workout set later in the day, then like being able to dunk in the morning and being able to dunk in the afternoon, being able to do court work 5 days a week, being like it's just like very slow, meticulous progression, like being able to then add conditioning or take away conditioning. Like right now, the current phase that I'm in, whatever number I don't know that is, um, we whatever phase I'm in right now, I don't know what number that is, but like it's now adding live action stuff. So like one on one, I hadn't done that before. It's multiple times in a week. I'm doing that now. Yeah. So like it's
And
all
more
planned
competing.
based on like what is going to be like. Am I ready for that physically? Am I ready for it skill wise? And what utility will it give me?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll because I wanted to make sure we weren't going to dive into phase two before some of these other
Yeah,
questions.
but that's what we're going to talk about. Those are kind of the stuff and trajectory because people see these videos and it's just a snippet. And I know people have actual questions. There are athletes that have actual questions. There are people who follow me who are curious about some of the stuff. Obviously, ask questions. We'll get people on here to talk about it. But it's not just some random like, oh, like people say, oh, someone's trying to scam people. Like, dude, I spend way
What are
too
you
many hours.
scamming them on?
Like, this
What
is
are you
not
scamming?
fake. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go. I would not voluntarily work out this much.
Right.
I
Exactly.
wouldn't. I hurt. It's painful. This is a process that is lonely because you do a lot by yourself. It's filled with doubt. It's
Yeah.
filled with like you're by yourself. Like, am I doing the right thing? You're questioning it. It's fun for like a week,
Yeah,
like
but
a
you've been at this
single
for
week.
18 months now, right? We're coming up on 2 years.
Yeah, really
You've been
going
committed to
pushing
it.
the envelope. I think started in January, and that's like when it really became a more pressure. Whenever I made a post about it, but that's where it really became like a lot of pressure to do this. It's been a couple months of going like very hard, detailed, orientated into it. And that evoked the most pressure because I really want to do well.
Yeah.
Like,
Of course, when you're a
and when you
competitive
say you want to
person,
do
of
something,
course you
then
want to do well.
I'm going to put myself into it and do it. And then you question yourself, like, am I wasting my time and all this stuff? And should I be doing something else, X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z? But that's kind of where I'm at right now with this whole thing. And well, not where I'm at right now, what I've been doing with this whole thing. And
Right.
we'll talk about where I'm at in the future and questions about it. And, oh, how do you get connections here? Can you do this here? Right? There's tons of options. There's 3-on-3 FIBA. There's so many things that could end up playing. But the moral of the story is I want to see if I can get really good at it first. I don't want to like disrespect the idea of playing basketball and just go out there and be like, oh, I'm gonna go play. I tried out for a G League team, but like that was it. Like, no, dude, like
Yeah, you're gonna
I want
take
to
this
get dunked
seriously.
on. Like I'll go play
Yeah.
someone who's good. Like I'm
Yeah.
not here. I want to see if I can actually do this. Is about me. I just happen to document it, and a large part I document it because it makes me feel like I'm less wasting time. Like
Right.
it
Right.
makes you feel like there's something at least alternatively productive about it that makes you feel less lonely at least. And because to do this completely by yourself with this long of a shot to do it would just make you go crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and you would just end up doing a bunch of weird things, I feel like, or you wouldn't hold yourself accountable because I do need to post every day. And like, I don't want to BS it. Like, it's easy to go out there and kind of BS it and tell yourself you're good. And if you're not posting about it or sharing it, then you're not really accountable and that can float away. Versus like
Yeah.
sharing it made it way tougher.
Yeah. The accountability you have for yourself's incredibly impressive. Right. So the next question I wanted to ask you, you kind of talked about this in the amount of times you train a day, but what drills do you focus on specifically for your basketball work? Because we see on your TikTok, on your Instagram reels, you have a lot of kind of fun, unique drills that you do that are hyper specific to obviously what you'll be doing on a pro roster. So what drills do you do and
I went, the drills are interesting because in the earlier phases, the drills weren't as much for basketball. They were, but more for the capacity to play basketball. It's like I would do tons of movement shooting because the deceleration of stopping myself placed lots of demands on my tissues to develop my tissues to allow me to do those drills more. So my theory was like, I'm actually gonna go as hard as I can in these drills and spraying off of these screens as much as for my physical ability to do that. I know I'll need to practice, you know, if it's overseas a couple times a week, if it's here every day. But I need to physically train to get better. So I need to have the capacity to train. So some of the drills are like really boring. I just kind of run and shoot and different, aspects of that where it's like I throw a ball out or I run off a screen. They're a little more fun now because we get to play and we actually compete and I have the capacity to handle more variety of drills. But like I said, early on, a lot of the drills were like, I need to be able to run and stop. I haven't ran and stopped in like 10 years, like of this intensity. So I'm gonna spend like 2 months. I mean, the first 2 months. This is part of phase two. We'll talk about it later. But like, I would get so much knee swelling and knee pain just because it was so. It was, some of it's predicted because you knew what you were doing to your body, and as long as it was predictable pain, that was fine. There's just so much stopping. Like my ankles hurt, my knees hurt. But what was interesting was when I went and played my first pickup recently, like open gym, I didn't have any aches or pains the next day. As a basketball player, if you go and play a really intense game, you haven't played in a while, everything hurts. Like your
Yeah, that
sides hurt,
next
your
day is
groin hurt.
ugh,
The next day didn't make a difference to me. I felt
yeah,
totally normal. And I was like, oh, that's a good sign. Like that's good. Like that means
yeah,
the stuff I've been doing actually worked. That's a checks and
absolutely.
balance right there. So it's kind of a fun process, and you kind of get creative with how you evaluate stuff. The drills can be fun, they can be boring, but a lot of times I try and make them fun because training is boring. So if I can chase a tennis ball or I can throw a ball out in front and do something kind of different or weird or go around a cone or whatever, and it's still getting the same result, but it's more entertaining than just the mundane version, opt for that because your engagement's going to be higher because it's really hard to try hard when you're by yourself.
100%. I love the drill you also do with the balloon. Literally
Oh,
just jump as high as you can and tap the balloon. Like the creativity on that is just awesome.
I haven't done that
I
one in
love
a
that.
while, but we did that a lot when we were doing the athletic bulking. So that is part of the phase one, building that capacity. And it was like, because I couldn't dunk, I was heavy. And it's not very fun to just try and dunk over and over again. You just keep missing dunks. So we would just like hit balloons in the air and try and hit as high as you can because the stimulus of jumping as high as you can is what we were after. And then the other stimulus of trying your hardest is part of it. So to jump as high as you can relative to also trying your hardest. I know they sound like the same thing, but they're not because you can go there and jump as high as you can. You're not really trying that hard. That will limit your ability. And so we did a lot of fun balloon things. We chased balloons laterally. I've done less of that now that I had dedicated like a lot of my time to court work because I feel like a lot of my skill and stuff is lacking. But with a lot of the guys I train, they are so skilled. And that lateral type stuff with the balloons, the jumping stuff with balloons is such a nice break because it gives them the opportunity to do something different and move differently because their skills are already so refined. It's not like, another 100 jump shots off the move is really going to make that much of a difference for them.
Right. But yeah, the creativity I think you include in your training, Max, is pretty impressive. Um, so with that, why don't or why haven't you played more 5-on-5 to this point or documented
Hey, you
your
know
five
that
on
B,
five
you know
stuff?
the answer. You should probably take
I know the answer, but the listeners and the
a
viewers do
five on
not.
five
So
is
I think
pretty
I'm giving
dumb.
you the chance to expand on that. So
5 on 5 is
exactly. So
dumb normally.
let's
Like
explain
someone
that.
messaged it me that on TikTok. Someone responded really well. They're like, college guys are still in college. NBA players are still in the playoffs, are taking their break. Pro seasons are still going. Who do you want him to play against? Like
It's a great
playing
point.
against people that don't. The concern is bad habits and wasted efforts. Like it's 90 minutes to go play pickup. If I'm not running a pickup game where defensively it challenges me every possession and offensively it challenges me to run an offense and build, because you're going to play pickup for the sake of feel and awareness mainly. You're not going to play a pickup game to get better at basketball. Otherwise, everyone would be amazing at basketball because you just play pickup and be infinitely great. It's not the case. There's a plateauing effect, obviously. When you go play 24-hour fitness, it's not the guys who played there for 10 years are all in the NBA. There's a certain point where there's no more return. And so when you go and play pickup, you have to do it with a purpose. So like one of the things is like I want to get used to catching the ball with multiple people moving around me. Like that's just as simple of a purpose as it might be. Where I want to chase someone off a screen. I don't care who it is. I want it to be a real action. I want to work on a hedge and get back. I want to work on offensive rotations and defensive rotations. And you can go into the pickup game with this in mind. Like you might go and I might play a night and might be like, I'm just gonna try to score as many points as I can. And you might be like, well, you're gonna miss a lot of shots. Yeah, I am. Like totally. But I'm gonna go and I'm gonna shoot a bunch of shots that I think I'm gonna shoot in a game. Sorry, fellow pickup players. But I'm gonna try and get this in live action reads. And you might do that one game, and the next game you might play the same day. The next game you'd be like, I'm gonna really focus on running off of screens. I'm gonna really focus on trying to make a certain read. Like I want to get into a dribble handoff as many times as I can so I can get a read. And you think that's an important thing for you. Because a lot of times pickup's a waste of time. It's just a complete waste of time. And thankfully, people I play with are, they're running actions and they're basketball players. And they know how to play. And the intensity is higher. The on-ball pressure is higher. The closeout window is different. The shots you can get off, no one can test any jump shots in pickup. I can just go in there and just pick off jump shots left and right and pick up. You play in a real game, like a real pickup open gym, that's not there because teammates are yelling at each other. There's denial defense, there's actions, there's reads. And you actually have to get open to get a shot, which is really important. And that's where the whole feel of the game comes into play. And it's easy. You can go play pickup and you can not score any points. Be like, yep, I got my job done. I got what I wanted out of it. Or you could score all the points. Be like, yeah, that was a waste. Like that was a total waste. I was taking shots that weren't realistic, or the defense wasn't there on certain actions, and it wasn't really useful for me. So it's really important as the athletes for you to be aware of that and not just waste your time.
Yeah.
And ultimately too, like, look, people don't want to be filmed. Like some of my videos get millions of views. Am I going to ask all 25 people in there, do you guys care if yeah, tag me? And like, oh my God, like at certain points in times, yeah, I might share some stuff. It's also just going to be clips. I'm not going to post a 30-minute video of a basketball game on my Instagram. So like if you're mad, you see clips of my training, you're going to see clips of pickup. And I'm not going to post the ones where I throw it out of bounds. Guess what? Like I'll post my makes. You can be just as frustrated as you were before.
Exactly. No, but I think it's important for you to touch on that, and especially with how focused I think your training has been.
Yeah, it's a waste of time.
Acknowledge what pickup is and the tool that it really, I guess the misconception around pickup, especially around people that haven't really hooped.
Well, you know that, so I'll ask you, like, what's the biggest difference between pickup and open gym with a college team?
Well, you completely touched on it. I mean, in like if I go to a 24-hour fitness, LA Fitness, whatever, and play, there's no structure. And there's no purpose to any of it. You're just out there basically. I'm just running rim to rim at that point. If I'm playing, I'm trying to work on conditioning, because like you said, you can go a full pickup game, not score a point, and go, I got what I needed out of this. Or I could just be a ball hog, demand the whole offense, score a bunch of points against people not playing any defense, and leave that thing feeling like I haven't improved at all in my game. Where if I'm playing in, an organized open gym at my college, there's communication on defense. People care. The coaches are watching, so the current players are gonna try. They give a fuck. Yeah, there's just a lot more structure, and it's much more game simulated. It's not completely game simulated, obviously, but the players are also much better. So, all of that in mind, yeah, I think for what you're doing right now at this time in the year, it doesn't make, like you said, any sense for you to play in any pickup, and it's much more valuable to have the training regiment that you're currently on.
The coach isn't there. It's just like straight pickup, and it's with a group of guys who take it very seriously. Like they're accountable to each other.
100%.
And that's a really important thing too. Like when you go and play, you're not accountable to anyone when you go play random ass pickup.
Yeah.
And here's an example. I've played pickup before, and I played guys who go out there and they'll score basically every point in the game. Let's say we're playing to 11, they score 3 2s, and then they score, what's that, 6, 5 1s. Okay. That's a really, whatever. That's a wild game, I guess. But let's say they did that. Probably not. They'll probably score 4 2s and 3 1s. Right. Okay. So that's 12 points plus 6, 18 points out of, the totality of points you could score. the in a game. Okay, you're gonna do that the whole game. Like I dare you to score 60 on us. Your
Yeah.
team's gonna give up on you. So
Yeah.
like people don't realize the games are so small that it can give fabricated realities. Like someone goes out there and gets a bunch of buckets. Like in a real game, there's a timeout. I'm not letting him get the ball. When
Yeah.
you got a guy here dribbling around and shooting a bunch of shots, yeah, maybe he gets hot and scores, a lot of your team's points. In a real game, that doesn't happen because we make him run on defense. We put him in actions on defense. Like when he's playing defense, I don't put him in pick and roll. Forget this guy. Let's make him work. And then you're gonna sub him out halfway through. Like it's not a sustainable option, which is why you don't see that in any level of sport. That level of inefficiency. And you see that in pickup all the time. Pickup is so stupid. Like you don't get fast break layups in real pickup. When you play real pickup basketball, there are not leak out dunks. I've played not any dunk opportunities. Like no one's getting beat and cherry picking like that. And no one's like leaking out and no one's not covering. Your point guard drops back after every rebound shot. You have coverages. People don't realize that there's a coverage on a shot. When you shoot a basketball, there's a get back coverage. So like if I were to shoot a three and I'm the 2-man, my other 3-man might not crash the boards anymore, and he might get back with my point guard. Independent, the team's really good. My 4-man might get back. So on the shot, they're actually going back on defense to set up against maybe a really aggressive offense. Like there's coverages within the game that how do you guard a ball screen? Do you hedge it? Do you blitz it? Do you, heavy drop? How do you guard a double screen? Do you switch the first and chase the second? Do you have a high hedge and you shoot under the hedge? Do you go tail it and trail it, hip lock? It's like all these things that are involved that people don't even bother to recognize. I don't want to go down that path right now, but so those are the things that are important for basketball players to play pickup with, is like those coverages. And like, okay, let's imagine there's a pin down and I get beat on a pin down, right? Let's say I'm the guy chasing, there's 2 screeners. My big might pick up my guy and his big might cut to the rim. So the guy who was the last screener, I have to know that and run with his big. Like that's a really important coverage to recognize and feel in the game when your big is overhelped because you got beat, and how you recover, because that's good defense still. Even though you got beat, you can still make it up. And that's what you care about for your feel of your game.
Yeah. And like you said, you just don't get that in your casual pickup runs. So a couple more questions here, Max, before we
give me one more.
end this. Okay.
Give me your best one.
One more. Well, I don't know about best, but I think one that a lot of people have right now. So what is your tryout deadline? And then what is your ultimate timeline on this process?
That's so tough. So I guess technically there's G League tryouts in August through September. And that's like the last line of time. There are tryouts and showcases for overseas stuff. I don't know if I'm going to do those at the moment unless something comes about that I find it to be beneficial. My biggest concern is being good enough right now. So like there's no point to go play in that because I know how those showcases go. It's just a guy dribbling around and shooting a basketball. Is it a guy, whatever. And that's fine. They are what they are. This endeavor is about me being the best I can be and then putting myself in that situation to make a pro roster. I think my odds are best, excuse me, they cough, served, trying to be the best at basketball, using my platform, my reach. I'll be honest, that does not hurt. Teams have reached out. I've gotten messages because of my reach to then showcase that ability. For other people who don't have that reach, because those showcases exist because you don't have reach. So by default, I'm not hugely limited by it. I kind of am and kind of not. I do know people, thankfully, with connections. And then I'll be able to tell if I'm good enough. Like, yeah, I want to make a professional roster, but if I'm not good enough, like there isn't a purpose to go and play a showcase. Like, I know very quickly if I'm good enough. Like, I know I'll play enough. I have enough pro guys who will be in town through the months of late May and June that I'll be like, okay, I got a shot at this thing. Then that gives me like a 1.5 year timeline. Like if I really wanted to push it to next year, then I'll do that. And then maybe I would do those showcases if I really was like, no, I should be on a team. I am where I am. I'm going to go get it. because the other options are you aggregate clips, you play games, you find live clips of you, not like highlight clips, but like actions and reads, full game tips, clips that you can send to people. There are certain showcase or pseudo showcase runs in LA that you can do. I have some connections with. So it really depends. Like I might do like a so you think you can hoop tour where I'll go place to place and really play against guys who are good and really see if I can, see if I'm good enough. And then if not, that's okay. Because I won't make a team then. Right? It's pretty obvious. Like if I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. I'm totally aware of that. But I'm not going to go down this fool's gold path of like going to showcase and showcase and showcase. The reason why I call it fool's gold is because then you're constantly prepping for these showcases. Then I'd spend like a week prepping and I go to this showcase and I go. And it would take time. Then another and prep and go. So I want to taper off to make sure I'm physically ready. And at that point in time, I don't even know if it's going to be beneficial for me to be good at basketball at that point. And that's an honest thing you struggle with back and forth. Like I said, thankfully, like I have a reach, I have a platform. I will leverage YouTube. I will do what I can in my power to earn a spot on a team. All I'm trying to do is showcase myself and someone can see it. It's the same reason why you go to a showcase. So that's the whole purpose of this here. People are like, oh, well, that is real. That's smart. It's not dumb. It's smart. So don't at me about that and be like, oh, it's not fair. You're too bad. Deal with it. I'm using my reach because my goal is make a professional. They're not going to just give me a roster spot because I have lots of followers, but people can see your stuff more because you have more followers. That's the big difference.
Right, and that's the work you put into it as well. You should be able to enjoy the fruits of that type of labor. All right, Max. Well, this has been an awesome episode here, kind of outlining your phase one. Anything else you wanted to mention before we close this out?
No, I have a lot more to talk about in the future. Like I said, I'll take notes and detail it all so you guys can go through it and see it and talk about it and like analyze what I'm trying to do. If you guys have questions, listeners, ask because I might miss stuff or you might see stuff I've done in the past, you might have questions about. But we'll talk about more of the actual phases of like how I got into shape, what I'm doing to continue to improve. And we'll talk about like I said, when to add in live action stuff, when to add in rotational stuff, when to add in conditioning. There's a lot of layers to this, man. And we'll go through it all. And then obviously, as we do this, we'll talk about basketball. Like we'll talk about actions and reads and things that my role will be designed to do. And you know basketball very well, Brendan, and I spoke the majority of this time, but you'll obviously have lots of input in this as well. But I think it's really important just outline the beginning part of this so people can harken back on this if they're confused or whatever. And I probably missed some things myself, so I might reiterate some aspects of phase one as we go through, because I never intended for this to be like fully documented to this extent. And now people are asking about it, so I'm going back and like writing notes like, oh, I did this during this phase. Let me go back and watch the videos and stuff. So fun. There's lots of stuff to come. We have athletes coming back here in May and June, so it'll be even more exciting.
Awesome, Max. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing this journey with you, man. It'll be fun.